Thank you for tuning in to the Student Organization Summit. Make sure to follow us on social media and check out the many other videos on this channel about working with and advising student organizations. And now, please enjoy your workshop.
Hi, and thanks so much for joining us for our session From This to That, transitioning to a virtual involvement fair. So I'm sure you want to know who I am, the voice behind the screen. Meet Janelle King. That's me. Hi, I'm Janelle. I currently serve as the Assistant Director for Registered Student Organization Services at the University of Houston. Today, I'm going to walk through our process for moving from an in-person to a virtual involvement fair for students on our campus. Thanks so much for being here, and I hope you gained something from the presentation today. So let's begin by hearing a little bit about the University of Houston. Founded in 1927 and sprawling over 667 acres of land in the Houston metropolis, the University of Houston is the third largest university in Texas and beautiful to say the least. We are a Tier 1 public research institution, and we're also a Hispanic serving institution. We have over 47,000 students and over 500 registered student organizations on campus. Within those 500 student organizations, we do house 10 organization types that range anywhere from academic and professional to religious and spiritual, as well as sports clubs and our fraternity and sorority life student organizations. So though they may be supported by different offices like the Campus Recreation and Wellness Center for our sports clubs and the Center for Fraternity and Sorority Life for our fraternity and sorority student groups, we in the Center for Student Involvement support all student organizations on campus. And so with that, we work closely with a committee, the Weeks of Welcome Committee, to put on a involvement fair for students on campus to learn more about student organizations, as well as the different ways that they can get involved on campus. And that is called the Cat's Bag. So with the Cat's Bag, for over 17 years, the Cat's Bag has been welcoming students, both new and returning, to campus. At the Cat's Bag, student groups are connected with students that are looking to get involved. Students are connected with student groups. Everybody gets to eat free food, participate in fun activities, as well as have chances to win awesome prizes, mainly including a free t-shirt, right? Students love free t-shirts. So I'm going to show you a quick video that is a little bit of an overview of what Cat's Bag typically looks like on our campus, just so that you can get a feel for what it is that we're transitioning from. So since that video has been created, we have transitioned to all of our student organizations, as well as our activities being on the main level of our Campus Recreation and Wellness Center. So that adds even more students to the first level of the space. This particular picture, I've called it aptly Cats Back in the Day. This was fall of 2019. The entrance for students to come into the space for Cats Back. So you can see students waiting, getting their stamp cards, preparing to enter into the event so that they can meet with different student groups and partake in the activities. So when we thought, are we going to be able to host Cat's Back in the same way that we have in the past in 2020, we thought about all the free food and the games and the students and the demonstrations, and our answer was a resounding nope. No, we are not going to be able to host it the same way, but we still needed to find a way for students to be able to engage with and find student organizations that met the needs that they had for involvement. So I'm sure many of you have done the same type of Google search that I did of how to host a virtual involvement fair. Where do we even start? What is it that we need to do? So the first thing that we thought to do was think, who can actually do this? What organization, what website, what company is going to be able to actually put on a virtual involvement fair? And once we find somebody who can do it, how much is that actually going to cost? Do we have the money to do it, as we're looking at what we're spending and trying to be more fiscally responsible in terms of what the world is dealing with the pandemic, and colleges wanting to be a little bit more stringent with how they're spending money? Would we have the money in the budget to host this particular event? And then how long will it take to implement? So once we decide who can do it, how much it's going to cost, how long is it actually going to take for them to put this particular event on, right? So we did some digging, and we were able to find a few different websites, a few different companies that were going to be able to host virtual involvement fairs. And they were all different. So in looking up the options, we were able to set up our demos and see what each platform could offer. So we tested Premier Virtual Fairs, we tested Easy Virtual Fairs, we tested V Virtual Fairs, we tested Hopin. And all of the platforms that we tested, they had their pros and cons. Some are really customizable and looked fantastic. Some were really reasonably priced, but couldn't necessarily offer the same level of customization, or the different add-ins that we may need to make it as UH friendly as we wanted it to be. We were also worried that our students wouldn't be interested in learning a new platform, or wouldn't remember how to actually sign into the platform once they registered to attend. So this led us back to the drawing board of kind of thinking of what we could do. So as we're in the process of researching, we did get wind that our involvement platform that we currently use, Engage, or Campus Lab, which is now Anthology, was gearing up to offer an involvement fair that was virtual, but we determined that it may not be ready in time, and we didn't want to risk waiting for this particular feature to be launched and it be after the date that our involvement fair was supposed to take place. So this led us to another option that we had heard of. So our University Career Services team here at the University of Houston had recently used Microsoft Teams to host a virtual career fair. So we wondered if we could use their format to host a virtual involvement fair for students and for student organizations. So this led us to our next step, which was implementation. Once we had the Microsoft Teams idea, we decided we needed to have the Microsoft Teams conversation with our Weeks of Welcome team and let them know this is something that we're thinking about, pitch that idea, and maybe set up a demonstration once we could kind of figure out a way to build out a test site. So we needed to build and test and make sure that it would be able to do the different things that we wanted it to do. And then we needed to work out all of the kinks. So in our implementation phase, this is kind of what we were looking at. So in building a virtual involvement fair, I was able to create something called a cashback demo. And within that was going to be our mock site. That was going to be a rough draft of kind of what students would be able to do, how the event would work, how it would flow. We worked through the kinks of how we could schedule meetings, how students would be able to use all of the tools, how they could add and update information, and what it would look like. So I'm going to walk you through our demo site now so you can kind of get a preview of what it looked like before we actually moved into our full event. So as you can see, this is Microsoft Teams. Right now I have it as a hidden site because the event has passed. So this is our cashback demo. So we would open it up, and so students generally land on the general page. And so we have a quick little intro, just welcome to the involvement fair. We had a student organization help area so that student organizations would be able to get assistance, a staff only area so we could chat behind the scenes, and then a student help area that students would be able to come in and ask questions and get help from the staff if they needed that. So students would also be able to have their own individual pages, so you can see kind of the different things. We played around with different ways that they could post things, looking at the announcements feature, looking at different ways that they would be able to add pictures or add content, how students would be able to actually have conversation start their meetings or schedule their meetings so that they could have that live virtual face-to-face conversation with students who were interested, which was a major piece that we wanted to make sure that we still had. We also were able to add a website to the different tabs so students could check out their websites, look at their files, and get a feel for kind of what the student organization pamphlets or flyers they had to put in. And then we also thought about the idea of creating an RSO interest form for students to use as well. So with that, once we worked out all of the kinks, we move into this access and invitation phase. So with the access and invitation phase, we decided, okay, it's time to open this up for students for real. We needed to find a way to get the ball rolling, start building, start getting student orgs interested and into this shell so that we could have an idea of how the event was going to actually look. So we started inviting student groups. We also wanted to build out all of the channels. And then we also needed to build out the guidebooks for student groups as well. So this is what we were going to be able to give to them to continue to learn and know what it is and what it looked like to set up their page so that they would be able to make it as robust as they would want it to be for students who would be interested to learn more about their groups. So when we're looking at inviting students, we did have a time frame in the sign-up sheet. So we held our event over 3 days. So students had the option to select to be live for just 1 day or 2 days. So because of all of the different things that were kind of going on and students trying to get registered for classes and some being in person and not in person and the different, aspects of students maybe needing to work now or doing different things to kind of help out or make changes in their life. We wanted the event to be a little bit longer to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to participate or attend if they wanted to. So again, we told them that they could pick 1 or 2 days to be live. We did require that for whatever the duration that they signed up for, whether it was 1 day or 2 days, they did have to be live for the entire 3-hour period. They could switch out, but they could have no more than 2 students on the page at a time. We instructed them that they could add different items. So again, PDFs, videos, websites, etc., whatever they wanted to do to spruce up their page. And when they were registering, they did have to sign up again through that Engage platform, but they needed to let us know who was going to be setting up the website because those were going to be the people that were going to be invited to the team before the event started so that they could get this page set up. Otherwise, the page was private, and so people would have to request to join, and they would have to wait in queue until the event actually opened up. Basically, like the doors are closed, and so you have to wait until the event is open before people can come in. And so that was actually a really nice feature that Microsoft Teams offered. That way we could make sure that all of the students' pages were ready to go, were set up to the best of their ability before we let students in to kind of peruse and see what the student groups were offering. Whenever students did sign up, they did have to agree to this bottom part in the white box. So we set the channel up as a shell. They were required to set up the page by a specific deadline. We did give them a deadline on getting that information set up because we wanted to make sure that we didn't have any blank pages or information that wasn't correct. And then we told students, you do need to make sure that you're available and live on the dates that you're agreeing to. Based on the Microsoft Teams, they do have limits, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but we did require that students only have 2 to 3 representatives on the channel at a time to prevent it from filling up and then students not being able to come into the space. RSOs that didn't abide by the rules or were talking about crazy things that may have been offensive or out of line, we would hide their channel or remove the students from the actual event. And of course, rules and regulations are subject to change at any time as a cushion, just in case. When we were actually building the pages out, we learned that Microsoft Teams does have limits. So there's a limit of 200 channels on any one Microsoft team. And there's also a limit of 5,000 people in the space at any given time. We knew that we may not meet our actual in-person live attendance numbers, but we didn't want to we didn't want to make it to where there were so many student organization representatives on the site that there were not enough space for students to actually come in to attend. So like I said, we limited to 2 organization leaders on the page at a time. And then we also had a limit of 196 student groups that were going to be able to sign up. The general channel counts, as well as the student help desk, the student org help desk, and the staff support channels that we needed to have. Those were 4 that were off the top that we needed to make sure that we had available. So that left 196 channels that students could sign up for. Again, each organization had a channel, and we included that RSO interest form. And so the cool thing about the interest form was students would be able to fill it out. I would put my name and my preferred email and the organization that I was interested in. And then at the end of the event, our team compiled all of those interest forms and sent a list to each student organization that had a response. So if you had 5 students that said they were interested in your organization, we would send you that information afterwards so that you could follow up and contact them. And each organization's page had a link to this particular interest form. We also included their Engage webpage. So every student organization within the Engage platform, we included their Engage page so that students could go and see who are the current officers, the mission, all of that different type of stuff that the organization may not have put on their organization's page. It was just there to kind of offer an additional amount of information for students. And then we required the students that were part of the organizations to add any additional components to the page to make it their own. So when we were creating our resource guide, we wanted to make sure that we highlighted these specific areas. So the navigation panel, the channels, and what the student organization's channel site will look like. So I was able to create a virtual involvement fair guidebook so students could see kind of what it would look like for them to move through the site and get their pages updated in a way that was going to make the information as available and useful for students as possible. So this is our virtual involvement guidebook. And so you can see that within the guidebook, we did have a table of content. So important contacts, what is Microsoft Teams, instructions to logging in, and then how to brand your channel, and then how to engage with students. And I think that those were the most important pieces, because even though Microsoft Teams was something that our students were somewhat familiar with, they didn't necessarily all have contact or have engagement with Microsoft Teams before the pandemic hit. So we did still need to make sure that we provided them with some type of tool or tip to how they can actually get into Microsoft Teams, what email to use, that type of thing. So again, important contacts, myself and Allison Yallen. And then we also had these privacy and participation guidelines that we share with students. So students, we had a privacy notice to all participants, basically know that we can see everything that you're typing, know that we can pull any conversation or video that you're engaging in. And if at any time somebody is not saying or doing something, then you need to report it to the student help desk and stop the conversation. If it continues to happen, we will remove that student from the space, as well as for student organization leaders, the same thing, reporting it to the student organization help desk. And then if it continues to happen, we will remove you from, or remove the students from the space. And we did have an instance where we did have to give a student a warning on they would be removed from the space. So we're glad that we had this in there so that we would be able to refer students back to what the privacy and participation guidelines were. Again, we wanted to walk through kind of what the page looked like, the areas that they needed to really pay attention to, as well as thinking about this piece of how to brand your channel. So we talked to them a little bit about the pre-branding that is done by our team for them. So the Get Involved website, like I told you, at the top of the page, as well as that RSO interest form, and then how they needed to brand their channel. So adding logos, information about their organization, how students can get involved, photos, that type of thing. We also gave them a rundown on how they can actually add photos and PDFs to their webpage or their channel. And then we gave them tools for how they can actually engage with students. So using the different tools that were at the bottom. So changing how their messages look, adding pictures, emojis, just having a meeting, that type of thing. And then questions that could kind of help to get the conversation going. So who's here? How are you hoping or looking to get involved? What else do you want to know about our organization? And then hosting that public call, which was really the most important piece. We wanted to make sure that students understood how they could host a video call so that any student could join and kind of have that conversation or attend their interest meeting to learn more about their organization face to face. So with that being said, we then moved into this idea of we are in the home stretch. Now we need to figure out how we can get student access. So they've signed up to participate. So now how can we get them into this space? And then once we get the student orgs into this space, how are we going to teach students to actually use the platform to engage with these student organizations who are now going to be in here? And lastly, hosting the fair. It's go time. It's time for us to open it up and just kind of see how it plays out. So as we're looking at access for users, there were two ways that we provided user access. So once students signed up and we got their pages built out, we would send them the group link, which would let them click onto the Microsoft team and request access to join. We would then cross-check our list to make sure that they were the student that was supposed to have access, and we would approve them to come into the page. Once they click the link again, it would take them to their actual page, or they could search for it just by their true organization's name and find their page that way. Later on, we discovered something called a group code. And so when you're giving the students the group code, when they go to join the Microsoft team, when they type in the group code, they are able to join the page directly. And so then they don't have to be approved by us in the Center for Student Involvement, because we know that we've given them the code to go directly to their page and make those edits. And so that was something that kind of took a load off of us once we determined that that was an option and students were able to join the page directly. That way, anybody else who was listed in queue was basically a student that was like waiting at the door, for lack of a better term, so that they could attend. We instructed students to find their page and use the guidebook to get their page set up. We instructed them not to touch anyone else's page, that it would let us know who was editing what page, so that they needed to make sure that they stayed on their own channel, and that their channel had to be completed by a specific date. If they didn't complete the channel by a specific date, we would remove the channel and then the student would not be able to participate in the fair. One thing about Microsoft Teams is even if you delete a channel, it stays kind of in queue for 30 days. So you can't replace a channel once you delete it. You can change a channel's name, and so that gives, you can kind of reassign things that way, but you're not technically able to like delete a channel. We told them that they had to have everything set up by a specific date, because on the day of, we turned off editing because we didn't want anybody else to be able to change anybody else's page. So whatever was on your page is what was available, and then you could comment, you could access all of the features, but you couldn't add anything because at that point we had already pre-approved what all of the pages would look like. So now we've shared our guidebook for our student organizations, and now we want to share a little bit about the resource that we created for students to join and learn what it looks like to participate in the virtual involvement fair. So you can see our privacy and participation guidelines. They're the same for the student. Then we also had this image of what the screen would look like with these boxes around the different areas that students would need to be able to see. So we really wanted to make sure that we highlighted the general area where they would come in, starting in the student help area, going to student organization clubs, what student groups would be posting, how they would be able to communicate with student groups, what the different pieces on the page may look like. So looking at the posts, the files, the website that the student group had, as well as the RSO interest form. So all of those things were things that we tried to explain to students so that they could see what that would look like, as how to log in to Microsoft Teams. We highlighted again that RSO interest form as some of the ways that they could engage or interact with student groups, having them to tell about themselves, ask the organization questions, respond to other questions, as well as participating in those public video calls. So showing them what that would look like and what buttons to press. We also showed them that they could private chat or video call with specific student leaders for one-on-one conversation or questions if they didn't feel comfortable asking their questions in a group setting. So again, we gave them the option, if they had any questions, they could come to that student help area and we would be happy to assist them. With that being said, now we're going to show you what our final virtual involvement fair looks like. I want to give you kind of an overview of what students saw whenever they logged in, and what some of the really great student organization pages and channels look like. So you can click on the WOW Virtual Involvement Fair and see all the student organizations that were part of the day. So in our general chat, you can see it begins with welcome to the Virtual Involvement Fair. And we gave students the information to start here at the Student Help Desk, which says start here. We showed them those privacy and participation guidelines and let them know to connect with us in the help desk if they had questions. We also created a GIF so that students would be able to see how they could unhide channels. So you can see I have all of my channels showing, but this is what students generally see. They would see just the general, just the student help desk, and that's it. So this is the student help desk, and so this is the first stop for the virtual involvement fair. And so in this page, we outlined what students will be able to find on this page. So on this page, we did have each specific day what organizations were going to be live, and so students would be able to kind of look through this to see what student groups are going to be live for that particular day, and then they could find that particular student organization's channel. And we had them separated by alphabetical as well as by category if the students were looking for a specific category for student groups. We also had a page for interacting with orgs, and so that was the document that I just showed you. And we also had an involvement survey for students. So this is our Cougar Involvement Ambassador consultation. So students can meet with an ambassador to get connected to specific organizations for themselves. So here's our student organization help desk. We ended up having to make 2 because apparently there's a limit of 150 people in each channel at a time. So in this student organization help desk, this is where we were able to communicate with all of the student organizations that needed to be communicated with. So when we were gearing up, we let them know we're almost ready. We're about to turn off editing. So get your last pieces in, share this link. We shared with them the privacy notice anytime something may have come up. So for example, stay on your own page. Don't go marketing your organization on other people's pages. And then of course, whenever the event was over, we let them know, thank you so much for participating, you're done, et cetera, et cetera. We wanted to make sure that students knew that we appreciated everything that they had done to still make the event a success. And then of course, this is our involvement fair staff page. So this is where we were talking about all the different things. If there were questions, what we needed to do, we were able to do it there. So now we'll take a minute to kind of take a look at some of the different student organizations who had set up their pages. So here's a student group who did a really great job putting together their page. So you can see they started off with an interest form, posting about their social media information. You can see they then went ahead and shared about each of their student officers in their exec board. After they did that, they added a link for their website. So you can see up at the top, they've got their interest form. They've got our interest form. This is what our interest form looked like. I shared that a little bit earlier. And they've also got a presentation for students to watch on their own. So their presentation was really informative. It had a lot of information. It was vibrant. You can see it has music. It actually has a video of their presentation, their new member presentation. in it. So they really wanted to make sure that they were showcasing their group for students to see kind of what they're all about. And they did a really great job. So that's one student group. Another student group that did a really great job was the Reform University Fellowship at the University of Houston. So you can see they use the announcements feature. So to kind of make a headline, different ways to get students involved. So they said, ask a question. They also added a video for students to watch as well. So students were able to kind of watch this particular video to learn more about the student group.
Hey y'all, I'm Brooks. I'm the campus minister with RUF, University of Houston. RUF is a Christian ministry for anyone.
So they highlighted all of their student officers in their organization, and maybe one more. So you can see they also use different font sizes to kind of make it more appealing and eye-grabbing for students to click on and find out more about this student organization as well. And then lastly, this student organization used the image feature. So you can basically see they crafted things as images, and then also left this information of if you're not able to make our live, you can still drop your questions and we'll be sure to reach back out to you. So as you can see, students really took advantage of setting up the page and making it their own. Some students went completely all out and added lots of different features and information to really grab the students in. And some went with more of a simple vibe of just putting the information and having students complete the interest form. But overall, students had a good experience. So here's a little bit of feedback. One student said, it was a good way to connect with students at the school despite the pandemic. I like the ability to post materials asynchronously and then attend at certain specified times to chat with interested members. And lastly, we were able to showcase our organization in a safe way. So even though we had positive feedback, we also received feedback that students wish that more students had attended over the course of the 3-day period. And we definitely can agree with this. With all of the organizations being on their own channels, it's a little bit harder to grab students and get them to come to your page if the student doesn't already have an interest in that specific topic. We did allow students to post once or twice in the general channel so that they could let students know that they were there, what they were about. So as students were coming in and seeing that general room, they would be able to kind of maybe get an idea of some of the student organizations that were there that they may not have reached out to on their own. When someone is walking by your table, it's a lot easier to say, hey, you over there, come check us out. So with this particular virtual experience, students had to try a little bit harder to get students to come to their page that may not have joined their organization in another time. So we agree that we hope that more students would have attended over the course of the 3-day period. So when we're thinking, how did it go? How many students actually did attend? We ended up setting up channels for over 163 organizations, which is really good. For us, with our Cats Back event, we see anywhere from 190 organizations to 220. So we can provide tables for anywhere between those two numbers. And so for our virtual event to have 163 organizations, we're really proud of those numbers. We did have over 1,300 students in attendance. That includes the students that were manning their channels. However, we know that a lot of students were able to get some really good recruitment going from this particular event, even though for some students it may not have panned out the way that they wanted to. And even to this day, this page is still open. It's still available for students to join. It's public on the Teams channel. So it's still being perused by lots of students that are looking to get involved. And every now and then I'll get a notification that a student has sent a message to another organization looking for more information on how they can get involved. So what will we do differently next time? I think that we are truly considering shortening the time frame. 3 days was a long time. So we're looking to do it either 1 or 2 days this next go round, just to still try to give a little bit of an option for those who may not be able to make it the first go round. And then maybe looking at less students being required to be present. So currently we had it to where at least 2 students had to be present in the room at a time, but maybe just 1 student is needed and they can switch out. But we haven't decided that just yet. And I think the last thing that we would look to do differently this next time is using that group code to invite students rather than the group link, so that we can make sure that we're not spending a lot of time trying to cross-reference who should be into the page, and just giving students the access to join as they need to join. Overall, our virtual involvement fair had much more success than we anticipated. Although we had some hiccups along the way, we plan to take what we learned as well as the feedback from our students and are looking to consider this as an option for our spring organization fair as well. If you have questions, thoughts, or would like to chat with me further, I'll be available via Zoom after this live presentation. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you were able to get at least one new idea. Have a great rest of your day and go Cougs.
Thanks for tuning in to the Student Organization Summit. If you're watching this live, feel free to reference the schedule for the day and use the link in the schedule to access a Q&A room where you can ask questions or chat with the presenters from this workshop. If they didn't list a Q&A link, or you're watching this video after the event, thank you for your interest in the Student Organization Summit.